Watch your step up there. How are we for sound to the net? 1, 2, 3, 4. Speaking again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is good. We should have a gesture that is clear. This is, oh, I can't see you. There we are. Oh, there we, okay, good. Okay. Is anybody here for the first time today? 1. Well, welcome. Glad you made the leap. Hope it turns out to have been a good thing for you. And just a little caution to those of you sitting right up front here, the acoustics are not great right where you are. Okay. Good morning and welcome. Nice to see you here. Better than nice. How lucky we are. Beyond lucky. So just the last minute here, I'm inspired to start with a poem that has to do with the preciousness of being together, and this says it pretty clearly. It's a poem that emerged in me at 33,000 feet, somewhere between Kansas City, I think, and here. It was New Orleans somewhere, and then here. And I had been there at the Jazz Festival with my wife Jennifer. And she stayed behind a few days with a friend. So we got up in our bed and breakfast and took a taxi, and I dropped her off at her hotel where her friend was. And we had a quick kiss, and then I turned and got in the cab and went to the airport. And then this poem emerged. So I walked back to the restroom, and then this emerged. People sleep, watch videos, play games on screens, and sip at wine. We hurtle west over snow-covered mountains. a chasm opened, or perhaps just revealed itself, with a taxi goodbye kiss in a city now ancient and far. That moment of looking away, or one plane change ago, it's really the same. Here and then not here. It's that simple. Those moments that we actually have, actually can touch, smell, hear, see each other, are all we really have. The stakes are high, aren't they? Either we connect and love one another now, or not at all. That moment of looking away, or one plane change ago, it's always the same. Here, and then not here. It's that simple. Those moments that we actually have, actually can touch, smell, hear, and see each other, are all we really have. The stakes are high, aren't they? Either we connect and love one another now, or not at all. I had a conversation, extended conversation with someone just in the last couple of days on a topic that it's come up a few times, certainly. I have boxes, literally boxes, of paper photographs from my children's childhood. I probably have, 100 hours of decaying videotapes. What a waste of time all that documentation was. All those hours spent behind a stupid camera lens. A few's nice. But we go through the world, have gone through the world thinking, I've got to save this, I've got to save this. There's no way to save any of it. It's gone. It's quite interesting, and now there's the whole electronic documentation. I exist. We're pretty nutty. So here we are in this practice of being here in the present moment, to be with ourselves, to be with this person, in order to facilitate or potentiate the capacity to be with each other and to be actually effective in the world. It's interesting, such a simple practice as sitting and being aware changes so much. So please join me in, if you wish, in the chanting the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And of course, just a reminder that the Buddha isn't fundamentally some guy that lived 2,500 years ago, remarkable as he was. It's the fact that we can be the Buddha, that we are the Buddha, that we are awake, that we are the ultimate interconnection with each other, because we all spring out of the same earth, for one thing. Right? We borrow a few molecules for a while and pretend we're separate, but not for long. So that's the Buddha, and then Dharma is the way things are. Taking refuge in the way things are is such a relief. And then in community, and the fact that we can be together to practice. So join in if you wish. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. Sangha, I take refuge in Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Once more, I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Nice, 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 nice. There's a very famous, beautiful Tibetan Lama teaching here this weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and again tonight. His name is escaping me, but he has maybe the softest hands I've ever touched. When he came, I sat with him, we held hands for a little while, just incredible. And his heart is just about the same. Beautiful man. And I was here Friday evening for a little while. And first thing he talked about was how, in a way, our task is to come into harmony with the earth. Because we are the earth. And if we come to peace with the earth here, we are increasingly at peace with the earth as it manifests as other beings. And so to become aware of our earthenness and then our perceptions and feelings and thoughts, and that it's all about coming into harmony. Not so much changing things as softening into being what we already are. So please let's do that ancient ritual of sitting. Just to sit comfortably upright. Doesn't need to be cross-legged. So much torture, so much self-torture in Westerners trying to sit like Indian peasants. I'm sure the Buddha came from a small town in India, so he sat cross-leggedly. I always think. Would have been so different if he was from Bali or Bolivia or something. Imagine, up here there's the picture of the squatting man. Would be very different. So anyway, let's just sit. To sit. And your eyes can be open or closed. And we each bring with us our emotional atmosphere. This could be one of the days when you woke up in anguish or anxiety or anger or fear. Or you could have awakened laughing and tranquil and confident and full of faith. Of course, that could all have changed a dozen times in the time you've been up. One state leading into the next. Or more accurately, just like that goodbye kiss, one state vanishing and another one arising. And there is a miraculous moment, which is this one right now. Those who study such things say that life has been here on the earth and complexifying for 3.8 billion years, trying this experiment, trying that. And it has managed to create you. And you come with a body and a consciousness. A body which is a home for consciousness. Along with all our other attributes, we have these minds that can abstract and can create fantasies. And essential in our evolution and in our capacity to plan for futures. It does have its downside, however, as this capacity to abstract can lead us to live in thoughts, in memories, and to hardly be able to see the world at all as it is. We can live in trance states, can and do. And at the outset of our practice, those trance states use up more than 99% of our conscious time. But here we are, already far down the path of awakening, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting in this hall. So we can notice there really is something sitting here. Notice how alive it is. Contact with the cushion or the chair, the hands, the fingers. Noticing the clothing on your legs, on your arms. Of course, there's no way to notice clothing. We notice sensations. If we're noticing clothing, we're in an idea, a fantasy. Notice the life in that which you call your face. And this organism breathes. It's quite something, really. It breathes in the lungs, carbon dioxide comes out and oxygen goes in. And the oxygen is carried to bathe every cell in the body. Didn't need this when we were single-celled, but now we're so complicated. We have to have this river of blood. So in observing the breath, we come into the present moment. And it's like observing the tides or the sun coming up and going down. It's observing the seasons. There's the season of breathing in and then breathing out. You will, of course, notice that the mind is very, quote, undisciplined. It is a mind of its own. It has its own habits. Its very design, in a way, is intended to create options and to to plan and to worry and to remember, and it gets pretty intense. It would be remarkable to add up the number of years of formal education have been endured by the people in this room. Thousands. Very useful, learning to think in a certain way, to compare and contrast, to create a thesis, to defend it, to use the rational mind in very skillful ways. But not once in my many years of school did anyone say, let's stop thinking. Let's make thinking an object of observation. We did have phys ed and sports and so on, and it was helpful. But no one said, let's sit here and just pay attention to the body. And whenever thinking happens, just let it go. Don't try to solve some problem. Just rest here in the beauty of your own body, in the tangible presence of the life in your hands. Each breath begins, rises to fullness, and then ends. Why not be present for it? Please don't go to war with your mind. There's plenty of war in the world. There's plenty of struggle and opposition. This practice is about realizing that there's no need to battle anything because everything is arising and disappearing all the time. It's really a matter of selecting where we attend. What do we strengthen by practicing it, by rehearsing it, by Many years ago, a monk friend of mine, in response to a question I had about concentration, suggested that I think about the sensations of breathing as being like a hammock. It's a beautiful afternoon, not too hot, not too cool, just enough breeze. And you come upon a beautiful hammock. Why not climb in? Why not get really comfortable and rest there? Wide awake, just aware of breathing in and breathing out. And so we can let the breath be our hammock. We discover it. We realize it's happening. And then with great delicacy, we climb in, we inhabit the sensations. When the mind wanders off, it doesn't matter whether it wanders 1/10 of a second or 10 minutes. In either case, the opportunity arises for awareness, mindfulness, sati, to manifest. And then there's the realization, the awakening. And that reawakening becomes more and more clear and apparent over time. And that's the moment of great importance, great centrality, because that's when there's the capacity of making intentional actions, karma. In that moment, the entire universe colludes to your being here, to your history, to your everything. And so that wandering mind could have been an impulse to do anything, to say anything, to think anything. But then mindfulness comes on. And then there's the possibility of choice, shaping a destiny. So we can choose to come back to the breath, to continue to strengthen that I will participate fully in the life of the earth, in my earthen body. Are you working hard, holding muscles tight, trying to do something? If so, soften, rest. In the next little while, please take stock of your circumstance. Notice the energy level that's present. Tired, awake. Notice if the mind is full of faith, tranquil, concentrated, mindful. Or maybe it's colored by desire or aversion or fear or restlessness, doubt, sleepy dullness. Notice it as it is. Notice any pains in your body. And then watch or observe or be present as the mind creates the intention to allow the eyes to open, and then let them open. Notice that they don't really, you can't really let them open. It takes will, it takes effort. Notice that their opening and awareness of them are, in a certain sense, separate from each other. Seeing when it happens. Awareness of seeing. Seeing and knowing it. You can drive this way, being aware of seeing. Seeing, hearing, sitting, touching. Just occurred to me, since I have the guitar here, the classic story of how hard should I try? The Buddha asked by one of his monks who had been a musician prior to his ordaining. He said, well, you were a musician. You know how a string sounds when it's in tune? But if you, actually I guess a chord would do it more clearly. Let me see here. I loosened this off just a bit. Something's wrong. Well, I think I'll try less. I think I'll just really slack off and not meditate for a month. Huh. Gosh, what's wrong? I think I'll go back to drinking and smoke some good weed. Gets more and more complicated, doesn't it? Or I think I'll really try hard. I'll just sit here and I'll never move. That's odd. I think I should try harder, because only by trying harder. You get the point? There's that sweet spot somewhere in here where it actually is tuned, and that amount of effort changes all the time. Sometimes it really makes sense to kind of, yes, I'll be here and I'll make effort to be with the breath. Other times it only makes sense to just relax and watch the show. So, want to do some Tai Chi, some Qigong? Before you do, let me say one thing. I want to invite you to stay if your calendar isn't pulling you very definitively to go do something else. To stay and hear what's said here today. Because it's one thing to do a nice guided meditation. It's another thing to hear aspects of the Dharma that might be opening new doors. Today, I'm not quite sure how it comes together, but there's a piece about the precepts and about as we turn in and anything left over from the past comes up, and we have to resolve it. And some weeks ago, I spoke briefly about I read from that letter from the mayor of New Orleans concerning the removal of the Confederate statues, and I spoke briefly about Germany. And what I didn't say, there was a fellow from Germany here who came up afterwards and said, well, you forgot the piece about the incredible work that the Germans have done to encounter their history. And it's probably maybe the only country on earth that's done it to the degree that they have. And he sent me some pictures that I'm going to share with you of what does it look like when we look at our past, which of course we have to do in meditation. What does it look like as a culture when we do that and do the grieving we need to do, and how much love can come out of it? I'm not going to do a lot of that, but that's one little piece. So I invite you to stay, and hello to those of you that are joining us on the net. And is someone doing announcements? I thought I will. If not, I thought someone had said they will. Gary, I'll take it over. So please enjoy the dance. Can you reach and get this down the back? I'll just grab it. Pull. Fish.
Where did that come from? Oh, forgot my sequence. There we go. Finished. Time flies when you're having fun. All right, so we're in touch with our feet now that we're standing. And our feet are in touch with the floor, which is in touch with the earth down there somewhere. And we have this standing form that's got solidity and fluidity and fire. It's got all sorts of elemental stuff that we connect with Mother Nature. Earth, wind, air, and fire, or earth, water, fire, whatever. Here we go. We're going to make friends with this little piece of earth. So getting it warmed up with just soft movements, sinking into the knees, soft movements in the shoulders. We can bend the elbows and then let the wrists press down gently. So we find all these interesting joints and sensations in different hinges in the body. Reaching out and up. And as we drop the elbows, the hands follow until they return to resting. Sensations fluidly unfolding, lifting, opening. The chest expands, more air flowing, more vitality, more oxygen moving into the bloodstream. And then a controlled rest down. We don't just drop like the apple from the tree. We have this harmony within our bodies to ease down. All sorts of components cooperate. Can we come to the earth element with ease? And staying in touch with our foundation, can we reach up into the heavens and paint a rainbow with ease? Again, there's a fluid unfolding. Awareness is dynamic. It doesn't have to go from the right to the left in a half second. It can sustain the idea of the rainbow all the way from one side to the other. The sustaining power of awareness. And there's a playful part too, separating clouds. Some ways of thinking about things are more pleasant, more effective, more skillful than others. We set up an image of separating clouds and all sorts of sensations follow. Opening to the side, palms up, press forward with one arm, pull in with the other. Switch positions. One palm going forward, one palm up, and reverse. And then dropping down, we'll open the shoulders as far as is healthy for us. Feeling the water element in the sockets of our shoulders. No resistance, just flowing from one position to another. And then lifting across, letting the weight settle in one leg, feel that earth, and then come back to a centered position, and then switch to the other leg. What goes up must come down, but it can come down in a graceful, careful movement that reveals the different elements of this move. There's tendons that tighten and loosen, and muscles that contract and expand, nerves firing off. Harmonizing with the earth element of the body. Turning to gaze at the moon. And creating a new fluid descent. It hardly takes any effort at all to create each one of these changes. There's 18 moves, but none of them are challenging. They just flow together. A room full of pendulums pushing across now, reaching for the corner. How many muscles and tendons have to cooperate to get out to the corner? The toes have to engage with the earth a little differently. Reaching across, going into cloud hands. For those that are new, this is one of the foundation moves within Tai Chi, but the Qigong healers took it up. One palm facing in, one palm facing the earth. There's a cloud going across the sky with a shadow following. We create harmony between the sky and the earth. So just for a moment, we have this creative ability to harmonize heaven and earth. Harmony worth savoring. Won't always be thus. Okay, then stepping out, we'll splash in the sea. Open the arms and watch the emotions change, the feeling tone, the mood changes with a large movement. Lifting the toe, riding the waves. Opening the arms, palms up. We turn the wrists forward with palms down. A new harmony, a new gesture. No stress, no strain. And then stepping back. Opening to the other side. Splashing in the sea. Riding the waves. Opening the arms. And back to the center. Make a fist and sink. Let the dragon rise from the sea. So again, the quality of the image changes the feeling in the body. Rising from the sea. soaring with the cranes up on the toes. "18 ways to harmonize with the earth." I never thought of it that way. Turning the wheel. Going the other way. And back to the center. Another playful way of harmonizing the right side and the left side. And then another quiet finish. Returning our attention inward. Feeling the breath. Releasing the tension with the out breath. Once more. Standing, resting, no gestures, no external movements. There's a lot of internal adjusting going on. There's a little dance going on now. A spontaneous readjustment to each breath, each moment, balancing this interesting shape on two pegs. Where would we be without our toes extending forward? It'd be much more difficult. But we scan at the end of a routine like this to see what the effects of this harmonious connection with the body has been. Are there areas that are more relaxed, less stressful, more fluid, less contraction? Are there areas that are still tight that remind us of old injuries or work that we still need to do in our balancing, exploring the energy of the body? We can learn something new each time we go through these. What's our chronic holding pattern? What's the easiest section to relax into? The most pleasant? The most energizing? And then sinking again, opening to the side. We'll gather all this experience, integrate it, knowing that some things we learn we may not realize for a couple days. We'll be walking down the street and something will release. Some seed has been planted by the 18 steps of the Shibashi form. Okay, thank you very much. And the second Saturday in October, I'll be here for a half-day retreat if you want to explore some more.
Thank you, Jimbo. Some of them are yellow, Rob. Oh, announcements. Huh. Change hats. Matt McTighe will be here at noon to do Dharma consults, meaning if you'd like to ask someone who's been meditating for a long time and had lots of teacher training about your practice, he will be here and he'll be meeting in this room. The family situation come up. It had to be a little later than planned. Two weeks ago, I was here with Joanna Macy, spoken about it last couple of weeks. And one of the things that she teaches, one of the central things that she teaches, is that we are involved, we are at a place in the Earth's history where it's the third great revolution. We had the agrarian revolution, where after 99.96% of our time on the planet, where we were in small hunting and gathering bands of 50 or less, 0.04 of our time with this brain is Mesopotamia. It's just an eye blink ago. There was this revolution, and we learned how to grow crops, and we settled down to some significant degree. And then a gazillionth of an eye blink ago, 200 years ago, with Newton and the steam engine, we've experienced the Industrial Revolution. And it's taken us to the brink of doing ourselves in, because we have this notion that we can continue to grow profits particularly can always continue to grow. And of course you can't do that on a little tiny ball that's floating in space. And then there's this third revolution, which she calls the Great Turning, which is the revolution in consciousness in which we realize that we are all utterly interconnected, and that the only sensible thing is to love each other and to share. And we can only do that in community, right? It's the learning how to see one another intimately and with an open heart. We have to have others with whom to practice. And so that's kind of a very maybe deep, a profound order or understanding of what PIMC is about. This is a place of learning to love each other, and a place of taking refuge when difficult times happen. And I've been teaching here in Portland since 1979, and PIMC has been here since 2004, if you can believe that. I remember when we came and found the center, and boy, was there a lot of work done. Man, oh man. By volunteers, by you. And so we are now, one of my favorite images, we are now the cambium layer here. Most of the trees are just dead wood, but there's this little tiny layer, a cell or two thick. That's where the life is happening. And we are that right now on the planet and in this center. And so it is our privilege and responsibility to be alive. And so of the ways you can support this center, which keeps the doors really more and more open for people, is financially. So there's a Dana bowl back there. Oh, I wonder, I think there's also a card reader. I'll see if I can find it in here. The Tibetan group's been using it this weekend. You can also go online and make a monthly contribution, and that's really helpful. And you can participate in classes, of which there's a bunch coming up. Come back to that in a minute. You can also volunteer. We always need help. This is a big place to keep running. And Kirsten, are you willing to greet people who would like to? If you want to belong, you can't. Too bad. There's no membership. Way back when we were incorporating, we decided we don't want to have a membership because then people will feel like, it's like, no, you're going to be wanting me to be a member. So you can't be an official member, but you can really belong, and you can belong by participating. And one of the ways to really participate is to wash a window or vacuum a carpet or something. Class, listserv. We have a communications network, of course. You go onto the website and you can click on a button or two and find how to sign up for the listserv, and then you'll be part of the communications back and forth in the community. You can also sign up for an announcement list, in which case you'll get just the occasional announcement. And among the announcements, I have a retreat coming up at Brighton Bush, I hope. Come on, rain. There's fire within a mile of Brighton Bush. It's on the road on the way up from Detroit. And they're in a compulsory evacuation now. There's nobody there. And so hopefully it will be spared. It looks like it will, given the rain's coming. That'd be a loss, wouldn't it? So I'm doing that, and then also before that, earlier in October, I'm teaching at Hollyhock, a beautiful retreat center in Canada, that you could come on up and do a 6-day or 5-day retreat there. Michael, you want to speak a little bit about this? Sorry to put you on the spot. Hang on, I got to get the microphone. I forgot. Here you go.
Thank you, Robert. I'm the volunteer that takes your gifts in the form of these clothes and blankets and pillows and anything that you have which you think would be useful to those people that are living on the street, many of whom are living on the street with anticipation of moving into an apartment soon. and that's where the donor that we go to, Transitions Project, has their assistance targeted for. So a few weeks ago, this had run very empty, and now you can see it looks very plentiful. I will take this stuff from here, and it will be empty again. So if you have things that you want to bring to help people's lives a little bit, make it a little bit easier for them, they'd sure appreciate it. They've told me that socks, clean underwear, toiletries are their biggest single need. And then I think as we're getting closer to the winter season, blankets and coats and those types of weather proofing types of items will be very, very useful. So thank you for everyone who has generated today and in the past. It's well appreciated and it's very well utilized.
Thanks. I'd like to begin what I am about to say with gratitude for your presence here. Without you, I wouldn't get to sit here. And I wouldn't be required to speak about the Dharma. And it's really good for me to speak about the Dharma. And funny, I just had an intrusive thought about Ruth Denison. Some years ago, a long time ago, 25 years, maybe more, I went down to where Ruth lived in the desert in California in order to stop teaching, to quit. And it was just too hard. And so very soon after I was alone with her, I said, I want to stop. She had told me, she'd authorized me and said, you need to teach. Like she gave the first check for $10,000 years and years later for this center and said, here, start a center. And I went, ack. Fortunately, I had the partner, Nancy Turner. There's a picture of us out there in the hall. That without her, it couldn't possibly have happened because she did the real estate stuff and the money stuff. And she could do that remodeling stuff really well. But anyway, on this other instance, I went and I said, it's too hard. I mean, I'm not enlightened. What the hell? I mean, this is ridiculous. And she said, oh, yeah, darling, I know. Last year, I was at the Insight Meditation Society, IMS, and there were 150 people down in the, or some huge number of people down in the Dharma Hall, and she was going to start a 10-day retreat. And she said, and they were doctors and lawyers and psychologists, and what am I? I'm a Prussian housewife. And she said it took Joseph Goldstein about half an hour to talk her into going downstairs. And then, of course, with Ruth, once she got her going, there was no stopping her, because what came through her was the Dharma. And that something similar to that happens to me here. I often don't know, I never know exactly what I'm going to say. But there's something that happens through our connection and through this beautiful context that we're in, that something emerges. And I'm very grateful to be able to play this part of this role in it. So thank you. So far today, God, I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, haven't lost my temper, haven't been greedy or grumpy, nasty or self-centered. I'm really glad about that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And then I'm going to need a lot of help. And maybe this William Stafford poem, too, is so beautiful. William Stafford, Poet Laureate of the United States, 20 years ago, lived here in Portland, taught at Lewis and Clark College. William. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world. And following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. Is that not a couple of lines? Following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, so if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, for a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. For a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. It's important that awake people be awake. For a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. This living is really hard, isn't it? Dukkha, the Buddha called it. Not sure, well, doesn't matter. I have weakened my news fast, and I'm touching in a little bit now. Not a lot, but a little. This morning I stumbled upon an article about Venezuela. Spent a little while in Venezuela a long time ago. My daughter was living with a tribe in the Amazon, the Makushi, and we visited. I was allowed in for one day to meet them, and after that we climbed a mountain in Flat Top. If any of you see the movie Up, raise your hand if you've seen Up. If you haven't seen Up, see Up. Sometime when you need a little like. Human beings and life are really worth living. It's beautifully done. But there's this mountain there with a waterfall. That's Monte Roraima, and that's where that waterfall is. And it's the wettest, rainiest place. Never go there to hike, but we went there, and it's in Venezuela. It's on the juncture of Venezuela and Brazil. And I had an evening in Venezuela, in a village, in a small city. And I was thinking of it this morning. It's a country in complete collapse. Medical services, food, everything. It's just falling apart. So, suffering. There's this suffering on a big scale like that. And then there's the suffering of moods and sickness and fear and the sufferings of what we see happening politically in our own country, and all these things have the sufferings in a relationship. Isn't relationship a challenge? Wow. The sufferings of having children, trying to get pregnant, finally getting pregnant, then there's the birth, and then it goes on and on. Now there's also the beautiful, remarkable, exquisite aspect of it, but there is this, it's so difficult. And one of the ways that we can make it more difficult, and we do, is that we forget that we are completely, intimately interconnected, that anything that I do to you, I do to me, and that there's no getting away with anything. And so, and we come from this reptilian, mammalian history where it's pretty natural for us to look out for number one, maybe number one, and maybe a few near and dear to us. There's another beautiful poem I'll share with you. I think one of my top 10. Come back to it a lot. It's by Einstein. Who would have thunk that Einstein was such a mystic? A human being is part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. She experiences herself, her feelings and thoughts as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion in consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. That's something. A human being is part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. An aspect of the Great Turning, or of the consciousness revolution, is that we discover that our sensitive, compassionate hearts tremble when faced with suffering. That's the Buddha's definition of compassion. That we discover that we're starting to love more and more people. We're starting to be touched by the plight of more and more people. Hence the part of the challenge of doing this and being involved in a world with so much stuff flooding in the media, which is also why we must meditate deeply, really deeply, to recognize the magnificent impersonal unfolding that is the universe. That there's this everything is interdependent on everything else, and it's all flowing and intermingling, and we live on a dust speck in the midst of this vast, unimaginably giant canvas we call the universe. And so all this suffering is actually really okay, given who we really are. But there's this end where we tune in to our suffering and the suffering of others, and we become more and more sensitive the more we meditate, the more we attend. And so one of the foundational, central teachings of the Buddha is that how we behave toward each other is of great importance. Right? We can make a mess so utterly fast. And so there's these precepts. I think I'm changing track. I don't think I'm going to do the slide thing right today. But how many of you know the precepts? Oh my, perfect talk. Good. If I release this, something happens. There's this great mass of the earth, and there's the mass of this, and there's something between them that we call gravity. There's also gravity between these two things, but it's not so strong because neither of them is massive. But here, in close proximity to the earth, if I let this go, it does this. And I could do this all day, and it would continue to do it. If I were far away up in space, it probably wouldn't. But I'm within this field. So that's what we call a law. Right? A law. It's a scientific law. And we come to believe it and trust it because it's there so dependably. The precepts are an articulation of natural law as well. And they cover the same ground as the Ten Commandments. And every spiritual, every religious system has covers this ground. But there's a particular thing about the way these 5 precepts do it that I've always loved. And that is, they're not imposed by a creator any more than this is imposed by a creator. It just happens to be the physics of it. And so the precepts are descriptors of boundaries or phenomena that if we want to live happily and in harmony with our fellow beings, these are good guides. And as guides also, once we know them, then we can be clearer. Wow, that didn't work, right? That blew up in my face. There were a lot of people hurt by that, or there was one person hurt by that, or the consequences of that were that I felt crappy, or that I felt really bad, or that someone was hurt badly. So I'm going to, maybe I'll go through them all first and then come back. I'll show you the Pali language version too. It goes like this. Panati pata veramani sikapadam samadhiyami. People have chanted that for 2,500 years. Interesting words. So, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking the life of any living being. And 20 years ago or so, there's a positive statement that shows itself in the teachings a little bit, but it isn't part of the usual chants, but I created these positive ones for chanting. They've kind of stuck now. I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. Second one, adina dana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. It's a tricky wording. I aspire to become generous to all beings. Kamesu micha chara veramani sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. Musawada veramani sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from false and harmful speech. I aspire to use speech to create happiness, harmony, and understanding. Sura meraya maja pamaratana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from the use of intoxicants that dull the mind. I aspire to cultivate mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. Time. Good. What a different world it would be if we all just refrained from killing human beings or harming human beings. The greatest dollar export of goods from the United States is weapons. Our foreign aid is very often linked to buying our super-duper weapons. So nobody here probably is profoundly involved in killing human beings, I hope. Though I have over the years been, I would say, privileged to meet some of our boys and girls who've gone overseas and killed people, and to help them encounter the incredible anguish which they had from that, and the shutting down of their. Turns out that the worst PTSD isn't watching your friends be killed; it's from killing people. That there's a serious problem in us. We're not supposed to. It's kind of the law, right? We're not supposed to kill each other, and we cover that over with training and ideology and so that's the first of the precepts. I undertake the rule of training. The second, the positive statement, I aspire to be kind and of service to all beings. That's a very interesting aspiration, isn't it? That it goes right past the in-group and out-group. It's all beings. That everyone that we meet is us. Everyone that we meet is our brother or sister. Whatever they're wearing, whatever their political persuasion. We sure need that in our political discourse in this country and around the world. That we quickly create enemy images and then we cast people out of our hearts. And then we're isolated. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. My example I like to do with this. Feel what happens inside. You see this? It's mine. Even in a silly experiment like that, did you feel anything? Right? It's mine. It's not. By contrast with, oh, gosh, this is a really useful tool. Let's share it. Then there's immediately a connection. It's ours. So I'm on a detour for a moment. Hopefully I can remember. The media doesn't cover it very well. But the outpouring of kindness and generosity between people who've been harmed by these recent catastrophic weather circumstances it's unbelievable. It's of epic proportions. People are going to such lengths and they're being so generous with each other, as always, because that's what we do. And our capacity for generosity and kindness is so ubiquitous. The Dalai Lama said that the acts of kindness and generosity so outnumber acts of horror and terror that the media have to focus on very precisely on the horrible stuff, because otherwise we'd notice how much love there is in the world. And we do, our image of how the world is affects how we feel. And until I think it's still happening, there's been less and less violent crime in the United States for more than 2 decades. And the chance of your child being abducted and someone making off with them is less now than when we were children and we were allowed to go where we wanted. Isn't that interesting? But there's one particular fellow who made himself rich with the pictures on the milk cartons. He figured out how to create lots of fear. Most of the 99.9% of all those children on the milk cartons were taken by non-custodial parents. But we have this image, the world is not a safe place. When my children were small, I carried a whistle. And I was ready. If I was in Fred Meyer and my child wasn't findable in 30 seconds, I was ready to blow the whistle and start screaming, close the doors, because I'd been so brainwashed about how awful and dangerous things were. So, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking that which is not given. So to practice on a finer and finer level, not taking what isn't given. Being honest about things, paying our taxes. There's something about taking more. These can get really big and very unwieldy, that we as Americans use so much more energy than is our fair share, that we can also take it in that direction. But we have to be careful not to make it so bad that we always feel bad about ourselves. Like, oh God, I feel terrible. I shouldn't be taking anything. The positive side of this one is I aspire to become generous to all beings. The practice of generosity. We always mention it on Sundays. One of the ways to practice generosity is to support the Dharma Center. And that's a gift. It's to the center, but since the center belongs to you, it's a non-profit. It's a gift to everybody in the community. It's a gift to anyone who wants to come. But that's just one place. You can give to yourself by taking an hour a day to sit. That's the biggest gift you can give to the world, or 20 minutes. Every time you pay attention to someone else, you're giving them a gift. You're giving them the gift of your presence in your life. And the Buddha said that If you understood the importance of generosity, you would never let a single meal pass unshared. And once you start finding ways, seeing where there's need in the world, you'll have such a great time. There's so many opportunities to just stop and buy somebody a meal, or help somebody on the roadside, or there is a lot of it. I was with one of my friends on Halloween 2 years ago on Multnomah Boulevard, and it was raining, and I was in my wife's car, and I couldn't figure out how to get the windshield defrosted. And as I was looking, I had to get off the road. I pulled off onto the shoulder, and the car went, no, I got stuck about like this. And we were there for an hour and 10 minutes before AAA came. 23 people stopped. 23 people in an hour and 10 minutes. It's amazing. Number 3. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. Please raise your hand if you've ever created a mess in your life or the life of anybody else through sexual desire. Take a look around. Right? Why? It's such a primitive urge, right? It's that which got us all here. And it's powerful, and we go insane. We go insane when we, quote, fall in love. And we do these, we lose track of ourselves sometimes. We lose track of other people and their commitments. And that's pretty normal, right? That's what we do. So we have this precept, which is one more bulwark or one more structure that provides us with some support, so that when we're on the brink of doing something like that, we wake up. Or after we have, and this is true for all the precepts, after we have, and we see the uproar, we see the upset in our own consciousness, we can beat ourselves up less, because the beating self up doesn't help at all. What we can realize is, oh, right, that precept, that's true. That's like gravity. That doesn't work. I should put this piece in while I remember. Ultimately, why do we follow the precepts? Well, to live a harmonious life. That's one piece. And that harmonious life provides the foundation for when I go to my meditation seat, what happens? Quiet. I'm coming up to it in a moment here. If I've lied to somebody, or if I've acted out inappropriately sexually, or if I've taken something, even something small, there's a flutter in the field. And then I can't go quiet. I can't relax down and in and experience myself as part of everything, because I'm defended, because I have offended. I was thinking about the taking what's not freely given. Stealing was not part of my childhood thing. I was very pure that way. And sometime in my graduate school years, first time through, I stole a salad. I was like, yes, I stole it. And 5 or 6 or 7 years later, I was on retreat in Bodh Gaya in India, and I don't know how many days it was, but it was a long time when I felt so bad about that. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And my preceptor, my teacher said, small thing, Robert, relax. But it was important. And some years later, I was back in Toronto where I was going to school, and I went and paid for the salad. And the manager didn't know what to do with it. He's like, whoa, this guy's weird, get out of here. But it was important. And so sometimes there is a place from going back and making amends. It's one of our skillful tools. So the second part of the refraining from sexual acts is to use this libido, which is huge in us, this remarkable force for creativity, to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. to play the guitar, to bring that energy, which is the capacity of communion with another person, to fruition in beautiful ways. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from false and harmful speech. Lying, gossip, slander. Whenever we gossip, let's say Jim and I, we're here talking about someone. Gary, let's make it Gary. So I'm going to say something about Gary. Gary is a wonderful, loving, beautiful human being. So I can say that. And then the next time I see Gary, it'll be fine. But if I were to say something not nice about him, the next time I saw him, I couldn't be intimate with him. There'd be a wall. Right? And the only way I could take that wall down would be to say, oh gosh, I was with Jim and the community and I said this really crappy thing about you and I'm sorry. The price is high, this kind of triangulation, this slandering or gossiping about people. The cost in intimacy is vast. An experiment to try about that is to speak not about another person, to not speak about another person without them being present, and to see if you can do it for a week. Whenever you start speaking about someone who's not there, stop yourself. And I know some people, Dharma students, come back and they report that our office culture is based in gossip. And sometimes it's really hard to deal with that. You start withdrawing from that and people start noticing, and then you have a moral and ethical dilemma. Lying, gossip, slander. Oh my. What passes as quasi-acceptable speech in the public sphere now is sick. Right? The way we relate to each other. The last, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from the use of intoxicants. There's an interesting one. Why do we use intoxicants? I know through my history of gradually growing up and using less and less and less and stopping. I don't want to feel sometimes. Right? In fact, when I stopped smoking marijuana 20, 30 some years ago, though I did for years and to wait a long time, I discovered I was depressed. I hadn't noticed, because every day I'd have just a little, that little weak weed we had back then, but that was enough to put a lid on the depression. And then when that wasn't happening, and when I couldn't do that anymore, when it fell away, I had to get into therapy, and I wound up on antidepressants for some time because I had been hiding from a reality. And we can do that easily with alcohol. We can do it with these electronic devices. We can do it with constant work. We can do it with information gathering. We can do it in all kinds of, when we're always compulsively acting. If you don't have time to meditate, I'd put it maybe this way. If you don't have half an hour a day to meditate, you're doing something compulsively. Right? That may be not always true, but I think it is. Here's another poll I like to do. Please raise your hand if there's anything in your life that you do that's addictive and or compulsive, and that you know your life would be better without. Look around. We are addictive and compulsive people. It's just this room. No, it's us humans. It's because dukkha is so difficult to bear. Right? Go without your cell phone or your electronics for a week or two. People get pretty wild. Last night we went out for dinner to celebrate Jennifer's dinner, and it was a first. We got in the car, and I said, I want to propose that all of our cell phones go in the glove compartment. Oh, it was tense in the car. But they agreed, and then my stepdaughter said, well, let's not leave them in the car. Let's put them in your purse, because I'd hate to have it stolen. So, think about it. What are the ways that you intoxicate yourself? And if you do it on an ongoing basis, why? And it's not like I'm a bad person because I do that. That's one of the ways we avoid really looking at our addictions and compulsions, is we go into secondary processes, which is, oh, I'm such a bad person. I've tried to stop and I should, or what's wrong with me? And it's just another distraction. As opposed to, whoa, look at this. I feel really crappy when I don't use that thing. Interesting. And then the antidote for that is I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. That this waking up process, this practice of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, this is the antidote to blurring ourselves out. Right? It's exactly the opposite. I will send these out on the listserv today in case you'd like to have them. And I understand them as experimental guidelines. And so we can experiment. The next time you lie, maybe a nice little white lie, notice how it feels. Doesn't feel good. The next time you're actually impeccable and clear, and maybe restrain yourself from speaking about someone, notice how that feels. It feels great. And how it supports your practice. That the less of these unskillful actions we do, the more we come to our meditation seat and it's just, here I am. This is how life is. One last thing. When we meditate, we encounter our past unskillful deeds. They come up. And they come up and we have to grieve them, and then we become free of them. The connection I wanted to make, maybe I will another time more fully, this thing about the monuments, taking out the monuments, the Robert E. Lee monuments and so on. As a culture, we have a history, an awesome, awful history of slavery, which has not been grieved and has been denied. And these guys on these monuments were very much like the Nazis. They were. They believed they believed what they were doing, but they were really in support of this astonishing oppression of human beings, which was slavery. I mean, the study that I've been doing, I've been so much in denial of the magnitude of it, the magnitude of the darkness in the history of this country, is astounding. And so to have them on these pedestals is really having very. It's the wrong message to be sending, certainly to our minority brothers and sisters. So, as a culture, we broke the precepts massively. I mean, and as we wake up, in the Great Turning, as we wake up as a culture, it's going to come up. It has to come up. Because it's there. And the denial is profound. And one of the ways that the denial gets presented is, well, this is our history. And it's true, it's our history. And those monuments belong somewhere. They belong in a proper spot where they can be contextualized. But they're not heroes. They're people who fell into the dark side. I guess that's the way to put it in modern language. And so for cultures and for individuals, the precepts always hold. As Ruth Denison put it, Dalink, you don't get away with anything. So that's that connection I wanted to make. And the pictures from Germany that I'll show another time are very beautiful. It's one of the train stations in Berlin. There's a plaque on the ground for every train that left Berlin carrying Jews to the camps. There's places honoring the gypsies and saying this many were killed, and that they've really surfaced this. This really happened, and it really happened, and we don't want it to happen again. And then as part of our own realization with our own encounter with the precepts, there are some things that I've done that it's really useful to remember. The Buddha taught us moral shame. When we've done something that really didn't work, that's a violation of the precepts, it's a natural part of the human mind to not feel good about it. And then when one is about to do it again, there's something called moral dread, which is, whoa, I'm not going to do that again, because I don't want to feel that way again. So it's a built-in moral and ethical compass that's very much part of the Dharma. Okay, thank you for your willingness, your intention to pay attention, and for being here today. And I hope this is useful. Thanks. Let's bring in the kids. I'm up. Would you put that on the ground for me? Thanks. Oh, we don't have a lit candle. Oh, it is. Ooh, it's just barely. Old men, did you say? Oh, man. Oh, good. Phew. That was a projection. Hey, oh, hi. I was thinking of you guys. How are you? Yeah. You too. Look at you. You got a beard. Looking very good. Well, are you our singer? All right. Hi, Tara. Hi. It's cool, isn't it? Small.
It's very small.
So here we are. Please find out. Oh, you've already got a hand to hold out there. Can I have a hand over here, maybe? Would you hold my hand? A finger, a pinky?
They can't really hold hands.
We could. It's kind of one of these hands is kind of big. Hi. So we come into this world so remarkably vulnerable, don't we? And we lean on each other, on our parents for a long time. And before you know it, we're leaning on others as we're old and need to be cared for. So these minds and hearts are capable of thinking anything. Let's feed them. Let's encourage them to think a kind thought. May I be happy. Ask, what would a deep wish be for yourself? And the person who's holding your hand to the right, what would you wish for them? What if it's true that we are one being? Why would we not love this person who's holding our right hand? And that person on the left, wishing them well as well. And then everyone in the room, maybe let your eyes open and see, be aware of seeing, the miracle of seeing. How does that happen? Then you make eye contact with somebody and two universes, or the universe meets in two pairs of eyes. And may all beings, 7 million of us humans, may we all wake up and remember. And may we treat each other better, as we must if we remember our connectedness. So, come on over here. Oh, okay, sweetheart. Oh, you want to sit down there? Do you want to sing? You want to hold it together? Let me just see if this is working. Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Now?
Now it's good. May all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu. 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 Here you go.
Thank you. All right. Well, we have a little tiny flame in there. Shall we blow it out? Not yet. Come, we have to do the count. I don't know why. You want to hold it? Here, you can hold it. There you go, sweetheart.
Man.
Think you can? Think if everybody helps you, think we can blow it out?
Yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Big breath. 1, 2, 3. Go. We missed. Try again. Yes. Success. Thank you all for coming. May you have a wonderful week. See you soon. And please come back and have some coffee and tea. Matt. Perfect timing. There you are. There's Matt. He's here to meet with 3 people if you wish. Just approach him and make that happen. Thank you to those of you that joined us on the internet, and may your lives unfold beautifully today and beyond. Hi. Thank you, sweetheart.
That was your present.